Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call our June 16th, 2021 SEAC meeting call them to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, learn, and live. I'd also like to state that the Durham District School Board is committed to learning environments that are safe, welcoming, respectful, equitable, accessible, inclusive, and free from discrimination, while placing human rights at equity at its center. And we will begin with roll call. And I just want to say that we have regrets from Hannah Nguyen, but her alternate Christina Salisbury should be in attendance at some point. Okay, so we'll start off with Autism Ontario.
So Renab.
Thank you. Durham Down Syndrome.
Tara Cully.
Ontario Association for Families of Children with Communication Disorders.
Elizabeth Daniel.
Okay. Learning Disabilities Association of Durham Region. Missing Ron. Okay. Voice for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Children.
Kathy Keating.
Association for Bright Children is myself, Eva Kyriakides, and SEAC Chair. Easter Seals Ontario. I don't think Christina has been able to join us yet. Our two members at large.
Cameron McLennan.
Cameron and Kelly McLennan, thank you. Our trustees.
Donna Edwards, trustee for Ward 3 and Ajax, and SEAC vice chair.
Thank you. Our staff on hand.
Sorry, Darlene.
Hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. That's okay. Is Darlene one of the trustees for Oshawa?
My apologies, Darlene.
No worries.
Okay, and our staff on meeting.
Thank you. Andrea McCauley, Superintendent for Inclusive Student Services, and Eva Rowan's just messaged she'll just be 10 minutes late, but he will be here this evening.
Okay.
Lisa Drake, Senior Manager of Speech, Language, and Hearing Services.
Excellent. Okay. Our secondary school reps.
Hi, Dawn White, Principal at GL Roberts.
Thank you.
Anthony Phelan, Vice Principal at Henry Street High School.
Thank you. And then our elementary school reps.
Good evening, Shannon Robertson. I'm Principal at Wesley Heights.
Okay. Okay, we will move on then to the approval of the agenda.
Christina has joined us.
Oh, Christina has joined us. Sorry. Okay, so we'll add to the roll call then for Easter Seals Ontario.
Yes. Hi, Christina here.
Great. Thank you. We will move on then to the approval of the agenda. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the agenda? Tara, seconders? Darlene, all in favor? Excellent. Okay. Then we are moving on to the approval of the minutes. I would like to note that the minutes had an error in them. It initially had Hannah Nguyen attending for Easter Seals in June, but Christina Salisbury was actually in attendance at that meeting. So we'll have to make that adjustment to the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes from June? And if you have, do you have any questions or concerns?
No, good.
Okay, then if we could get a motion to approve the minutes as corrected with Christina Salisbury's name, please. Darlene, seconders? Sensor and M, all in favor? Excellent. Okay. And now I'd like to introduce John Markowski, our Associate Director of Equitable Education, is joining us tonight and has a few words. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you. As you just mentioned, my name is Jim Markowski, and it's my privilege to be here. Just want to take a moment to just, highlight some of my priorities as an Associate Director to the board, but also just thank each of you for being here this evening and really highlighting some of the work that you're doing. I know SEAC has a proud history of being an important voice for our students. Your participation and work here supports the planning and programming that takes place throughout our system and really just kind of informs and helps make those informed decisions that we do. So I want to thank each of you for that, and ultimately even your willingness to be here as partner agencies. We have parents, trustees, community liaison representatives, and administrators. That enriches that kind of key discussions that are taking place. And I want to thank you for your commitment to this important work. In relation to my work and my priorities, just to provide a bit of an overview on that. My portfolio encompasses the responsibilities of school operations, and I also work in partnership with our superintendents to support our families of schools. So the official title is Associate Director of Equitable Education. And this was a new rebranding of the title actually just recently. And it signals a change in direction for our board with a renewed commitment to ensuring that all aspects of our programming delivery and support services center Indigenous inherent rights, human rights, and anti-oppressive practices. As a board, we believe that equity, diversity, and inclusion is about creating a school and a board culture that embraces the uniqueness of individuals and is representative of the Durham population. And in particular, we want to ensure that people of all identities are treated with respect, they feel welcomed, and are integral to our success. So in terms of working with our superintendents, I do work very closely with them and also with our other Associate Director of Corporate Services, David Wright. And under the guidance of our director, Nora Marsh, we have been prioritizing such things as the Indigenous education policy and our human rights policy this year. And that'll be a real kind of integral component to our collective work going forward. This work that we're engaging in will ultimately necessitate very deep conversations about how we as a system are operating and what we need to do to ensure that we're honoring both the rights and needs of all of our students and staff. In relation, digging a bit deeper and trying to look at it from the operational lens as well, I want to just highlight too, since we've started our journey with the COVID-19 pandemic, operationally, as I'm sure you're aware, there's, the day-to-day management and leadership of our schools has been an ongoing, I treat it as an opportunity. I don't want to sit here and refer to it as a challenge. I think every day has been a learning opportunity for our entire system as we've been working through some of the complexities that have been presented to us. I know when you look back and think of the last 18 months, just in terms of how we've been responding as a board, it's actually quite humbling to see how staff, education partners, families have all pulled together to ensure that we do ultimately the best we can to offer quality education and supports for our students and families. And really that's a testament to why we're here and the work that we need to do and continue doing. So I want to thank you for being here this evening and inviting me to be part of the agenda. And I actually look forward to our collective work. And through Superintendent Andrea McCauley, I would welcome the opportunity to continue being an integral voice to the structures and supporting your work. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. That's fantastic. Does anybody have any questions for Jim regarding his role? And well, thank you so much for joining us. It's nice to know we have the support of the senior team at the board in what we do and the voices we bring to the table.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 8, which is our staff reports, and we'll begin with the administration report with Superintendent McCauley.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Jim, for the support from your role and your own commitments to our kids with special education strengths and needs is incredible. So thank you for that. The admin report really brings 3 quick updates for you this evening. So one is on the start of the school year. And as a team, it was really important to us to provide parents and caregivers with an August opportunity for mode selection between in-person or online learning through DDSB at home. When we left for the summer, so when we gave you our June update, we did not have any of the smaller roster special education classes through DDSB at home, as families had not indicated at that time. And so responsive to the August survey and some information that came in the first week of school, as we know families were adjusting to transitions at that point as well, we have added a number of classes to our DDSB at home model so that our kids who had spring IPRCs into small classes and were selecting virtual could have that option. So last year we were running based on the home class and some in school and some at home. This year it's distinct. The classes are either in person in school buildings or from home. And again, with the support of the team and our union partners, we were able to use funds. And so we have 3 school support programs and 3 practical learning programs and 1 developmental program within DDSB at home. And we have 2 school support and 2 practical learning, 1 just added last Friday at the secondary level. Gifted was already part of the plan based on May's selection. But what we saw in August was families vote to return to in-person. And so 1 class was removed from DDSB at home and reallocated to our in-person. And that leaves 90 of our learners with DDSB at home. So again, we try to be responsive. What we have done is made a commitment that the students' spaces in their in-person schools remain available to them should families choose to move back kind of through a reporting period because those interpersonal connections are really important. But we do know that for many of those students, there is intense consultation with their medical teams and home considerations that add complexity. So we don't want the choice around education to have any additional barriers. So that's just our update, and we've got further in the department report if you want some more information about return to school. Tonight, we also confirmed that our special education plan for 21-22 is posted in its final form on the DDSB website, and we confirm based on PAC on SEAC for September as well that it has been submitted and received by the ministry. Our commitment reflected in the plan, just highlighting a couple changes between last year's version and this year's plan. Again, responsive to what we've heard from community around the SEAC table and aligned with our board priorities, such as those that Jim outlined. So that our commitments related to the plan is to continue to examine and reconstruct our services to remove discriminatory barriers and address the disproportional experiences and outcomes that some of our students experience. Because we know in order to get a truly inclusive model of special education, we do need to identify, address, and eliminate barriers that may disrupt a student's ability to access education without discrimination. And our focus is on intervention through the provision of culturally relevant strategies and tools to further address these barriers. And that's work that the teams are really digging into this year. And we know that each team positions slightly differently based on their professional lens, the history of their profession, as well as the tools available to them. Outlined in the special education plan is our commitment to our professional development of our staff, both at the school level and the district level, to be grounded in anti-oppressive and human rights lens, understanding and honoring that the identity of our learners, and particularly those where there's intersecting identities with those that cross over with having exceptionalities, as well as those who are racialized and those who are impacted by socioeconomic challenges, and those who may be discriminated against, minoritized, or marginalized in any way, is a driving force in what we do in order to address that. Our examination of practices and resources also includes deepening our consultation. We know we need to amplify family voice, and we know we need to amplify student voice. And our commitment to doing that, we make tonight and within the plan. Your input as SEAC on these practices and resources, on services and programs is essential. And throughout the year, we'll be bringing opportunities to seek your guidance, again, moving up at the front end of any development or changes, so that we can continue to be responsive to our students and build towards the plan for 22-23, which our plan is to bring to you at near the end of May this year. And then I'll just go back to the beginning of school and center on fostering mentally healthy classrooms. As we know, the foundation to the mentally healthy school return is grounded in relationships. And moving into this year, our focus was to co-create environments that prioritized connection, where caring, respectful relationships set the conditions for all to thrive. This year, as with last year, the focus is on developing caring and attuned relationships that will be the key to success for our students, their families, as well as our staff. So this connection before curriculum puts the focus on our interactions, and we've given staff the time with students, with each other, and family caregivers to reconnect, rebuild, or reestablish relationships with each other, where we allow time to get to know each other, allow for collaboration, idea sharing, and emotional support. Our classrooms are focused on the foundations of mentally healthy classroom the first 20 days, which has gone under another revision based on feedback from last year. As we re-engaged in learning, students are focused in foundations of mentally healthy classrooms, leveraging those powers of connection to support each other and educator relationships while deepening partnerships with families. And we know that all of this then leads to the contribution to making our classrooms more inclusive and equitable learning environments. And that's where we started the year. So connections before curriculum. And it's been really exciting to feel the energy of students back in buildings and back online together, and the energy that brings and the inspiration it gives. So we'll close tonight with thanking our families for supporting transitions into this school year. And Lisa will be giving more of a highlight of our transition supports in the department report. That's our admin report for this evening.
Thank you, Andrea. Does anybody have any questions for Andrea with respect to the administration report? No? Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Oh, I see your hand there. Sorry. My apologies.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to comment on the Spec education plan. Like, I know it's come so far in the last 5-6 years, like it really has. And I love that it's still long because it contains a lot of information, but it's much shorter and more concise than it has been previously. I was just wondering about accessibility of the plan. Are there, do we have plans to move it towards a more accessible platform for people who might be using different technologies?
Through you, Eva?
Yeah.
Absolutely. We know it is a gap, that the plan is not compliant at this time. And part of that is to do with the insert of the different resources. So what we've actually done is mapped a plan to go back to look at those resources as well. Because to me, it's not just the plan, but everything in the pieces thereof. We'll continue to work on shortening it as well, because we know that's a component of accessibility. So we're just trying to find a way to honor the regulation requirements, but to put the information in a way that is accessible. And then also dovetailing that with using the website as a tool. So one of the things we're doing right now is going back and moving the pieces into the website. So one of the things you'll notice is we don't yet have the transition coordinator and work experience role on the website in the role waterfall. We're working on that, but we do appreciate your comments, and absolutely it is a current gap that we must address and is important to address. So we'll be looking to SEAC's feedback as well as we move through those revisions through the year. Thanks, Darlene. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, if we don't have any more questions, we'll move on to the board report with Donna.
Well, we've had our first standing committee meeting of the year, and basically we had an update for the return to school, and a presentation around staffing, as far as, and enrollment. Of the sum, over 53,700 students on the elementary panel, there's about 11.2% that are in the virtual programming. And of the secondary, of the approximately 22,300 students, 88.4% are in the virtual programming. And of course, we do know, I won't cover what's happening in Spec Ed because that's been covered in the other. But I mean, again, we have, as a board, we have set aside money to ensure that we meet the primary class size targets, and that's definitely a concern when it comes to COVID and social distancing. So the staff, of course, we always know that by October, we have to have our enrollment numbers in and the expected class sizes. So we will keep that. Staff are continuing to look at that. We also had our technology update, and I'm sure some of you might have seen it in the newspaper as far as what we're doing. But again, the biggest issue is with the supply and demand of technology. It has had a significant impact on cost. So we've moved away from the touch screen model as much as possible to a lower costing basically Chromebooks. So again, it's because of cost. We're doing the best we can to continue on while maintaining basically a cost neutral budget, because that's what we have to do according to the regulations. So also just to know that the board itself has been going through, we have a series of, I think, about 12 bylaws that govern basically operations of the board, and we're trying to consolidate them. They did come to standing committee, have gone back to committee for some minor revisions. So hopefully get that all straightened. It makes a lot easier to be all consolidated into one bylaw. And I think that's basically about it from the board's perspective.
Thank you, Donna. Does anybody have any questions for Donna with respect to the board report? No? Okay. Moving on then to the Inclusive Student Services Department report with Lisa Drake.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see you all again. It feels like it's been a really long time. I think it's just the summer does that to all of us. I hope you all had a really restful one. I'm just going to highlight two things from the report that I wanted to make sure that we were all aware of. Andrea spoke about the ongoing commitment that we have to centering anti-oppressive practices within the service that we provide to students and families. And so I want to make sure that everyone saw the two workshops that are coming up. So on September 23rd, we have Charmaine Lane doing a workshop for families supporting children with mental health through the impact of racism and oppression. And then on September 28th, we have Nicole Tuzzi supporting transitions back into school. So looking at social emotional development and supporting that return to school that we know is such a big impact for the kids, especially when they've been out of school for a long time. So those workshops are in the report, and please feel free to share them. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is a project that we're doing this year within the speech language pathology department that we haven't had the opportunity to do before. So right now, until about November, we have an extra speech pathologist, and the role of that employee is to support the students who are needing additional communication strategies or other supports to help ensure the smooth transition. So some of the kids that were really really trying to help are those who aren't necessarily returning to school in the smoothest of ways. So these are often the younger kids we find who really need a little bit of extra intensive help, and oftentimes supporting communication and understanding of routines and what's going on, and being able to give them a way to express themselves can really make a huge difference. So some of the things that we're anticipating really seeing are kids who have an alternative communication system. They might use pictures to communicate, or may have some spoken language, but really need some support and additional pieces to help truly communicate everything that they have on their minds. Other visual supports like schedules and routine-based supports that way. And we're also imagining too that there might be some kids who really just need support around having fun at school and building relationships with educators in a really fun and meaningful way. So this individual will go into schools where the kids who need this most will get some frequent visits, but over a short duration. And then she's really going to focus on building the capacity of the educator staff in the classroom. And when she does this, she's going to set some really intentional and achievable goals so that what we can then gauge the impact that this role has had on the students and the educators in the room. And the way that we're going to do this is by working with our assessment and accountability team. They're fantastic. And they're going to help us to really look at how we capture that information so that we can present it back in a way that's easy to read and understand. So I'm looking forward to sharing the outcomes of this project with you when it's completed, but we're just starting to get it going. And she's going to be in classroom starting next week. And that's it. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate that. Donna, I see that you have your hand up for a question.
A question and a comment. One is just because you mentioned around equity. I just want to highlight that, our school board and our staff really do a lot of work, and even in the community. And just to let people know that an example is that the Ajax Anti-Black Racism Task Force is presenting basically a diversity exchange series and on September 28th, and Principal Eleanor McIntosh from Ajax High School, as well as our superintendent of Margaret Lazarus, are going to be discussing navigating the education system. And so it's just really key to point out that our staff do work with their communities and are doing a really great job. And I thought I'd highlight that. The other is just a question more on transitioning. If preliminary idea as far as have we received more than what was expected of students transferring into the Durham District School Board from others, students with special needs from other boards, more than what we had anticipated?
Go ahead, Andrea.
Mine, is that all right? Okay. So we're currently still connecting with each of our schools. I think for students of complexity, we had a good anticipation, and families were so generous in connecting early. And then our team, because we had team members in through August on the summer transition dollars, for families that did not have a lot of notice on moving into the area or were waiting to connect, trying to wait till schools were reopened. The teams were able to do a lot of intensive transitions. So we haven't felt a large uptake, but what we want to do is be really connected through the facilitators, through speech paths, and the rest of the team with the school teams. But again, most school teams, except for the 5 modified starts, are really just in those infancy of weeks of getting to know any students that were new registrants. But in terms of, as I said, kids with complexity in general, we've been able to balance it and meet most needs at this time, but monitoring because it's still early days. And we know for some kids, it's the getting used to the building again, getting used to a new building. What we have noticed is that transition component on just how many kids are returning to learning from being out since the first pandemic wave and then going virtual, and what that does in terms of changing the environment. I know for myself, one lunch hour out at Donald A. Wilson on the first day and realizing it was most of the 9s and 10s that needed to figure out how to navigate to their second class after lunch. So a lot of timetable assistance in the hallway that day, which was great to connect with the kids. But we can report back in October. I'll follow up on that question, Donna, because I know there's all kinds of impacts and layers behind it as well, starting with a heart for the kids. So thank you. And we'll take that back to our team and get you a more firm answer on this.
And I appreciate that. It's just that, I also, because one of the items is around the K-12 SEAC and we, especially transitioning across from other boards, it's not always an easy process for everybody. And there's not necessarily consistent documentation, et cetera, et cetera. And it really does make life easier when things are. And I know our staff does a really, once the student is there, do try to support students in, but it is really frustrating. And I know trying to, we're limited resources as it is, to try to move stuff around to support all the students when they come in and you're not 100% sure of the supports required. So, and that's where, as I said, the K-12 document we'll be talking about later is really, really crucial because, it also expectations from various boards, parents going to various boards, because there is a difference in delivery of special education services from board to board. It makes it really difficult time up, and then on top of that, COVID and everything else. Yeah.
Eva, may I? Is that all right?
Yes.
So just a couple points. Absolutely, Donna. So I think one of the things that is helping and assisting in the system right now was the proactive insert of supports, knowing that this transition was going to be our highest magnitude that we've seen in education for a long time, right? With the number of kids transitioning. And so just a couple of supports. So Lisa's mentioned the SLP position. That was funded through a 40% approved draw from the trustees on the special education reserve. The rest of the dollars funded 18 8-week EA positions, as well as we hold through the school support funds an early years focused EA allocation out to schools for that first time period in the school year as well. And then we know for reallocation to build stability in the system. So right now our staff levels are elevated to support at transition. So we'll be doing a lot of work with our school leaders and our families in the next weeks ahead as we kind of come from those first few weeks of entry, as we settle into routine and figure out which students are where and what their needs are. But again, with the support of the trustees in the approved budget, we did do a drawdown of 40% of the special education reserve and utilized a ton of funds from the ministry that had focused on transition in that regard. So we were bolstered to meet need, which I think is having the intended impact. And now we need to figure out how to resettle the system at the end of that 8-week period. But we've got the 2 months to do it.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, Tara, you were next.
I have two questions. One is unrelated to the Inclusive Student Services report, but because Lisa's here, if you're going to be around, I'd save that to the questions and comments period. So the first question is for, now I think you'd said for the pilot, I guess I'm going to call it pilot, focus was on sort of like the little guys coming in because they usually have a lot of transition challenges and that sort of thing. But are we solely focusing on the young ones, or just it's wherever that's the need? Like I'm thinking kids coming in from Kinark for the first time in forever with needs and any age can happen, that sort of thing. Okay, so we're where the need is, we're going. So
we're open. And the really, I'm glad you asked that question. The really interesting thing about doing something like this is that because it's never been done on this team before, we get to figure out as we're creating it what we want it to be. And one thing that we decided was that we really wanted to make open it up to the entire system as an option, because we can't decide who's going to need this more over a different, one group over another. And so part of our data collection is going to be, where are these asks coming from? Is it going to be, we're guessing and anticipating that at the younger grades, we might see more pickup there, but it will be really interesting if there are kids coming in, across the whole continuum of kindergarten to grade 12, and who really is looking for that support. So we're using the whole project as a way to gather information about what the needs are, so that we can make sure that we're continually responding to it. Thanks for asking that question.
Thanks. And just sort of follow-up question: How are you identifying the needs? I guess where's the intake coming in from? Is it parents? Is it CERTs? Is it what is that?
It's coming in from CERTs via the homes-based speech language pathologist, because we're the college and we have we're regulated health professionals. It's in order to make sure we get this done really quickly. If we have an open and active referral for a speech language pathologist in the school, then we can, make a quick connect with parents to make sure they're okay with adding this support to for their child in school. And so, in order to be quickly responsive, that's our first way we want to go. We also want to see too what the ask will be and what the numbers will be at that point in time. So kind of keeping it contained within our team allows us to have a little bit more control over the numbers that come through.
Great, thank you. I know Elizabeth had a question next.
Yeah, part of my question was going to be, how are you receiving these referrals? So that was just what you talked about there. I was wondering also if it's something that is occurring in parallel to the therapy that they would normally be accessing, or is this instead of? And then also if you're looking at using the outcome measures that you're gathering and the data that you're gathering to potentially advocate for this role to be recurring in the future, or if you're looking at it more as just a one-time thing related to the pandemic.
I think that with this role, really we're looking at getting information to find and then deciding what we do with that information. I wouldn't say that we have an intention behind what we're expecting to get out of the data until it comes in. We don't really know what we would even want, what we'd want to do with it. But I think that when I imagine what we're going to get, the way that I might set up things in the future for service is knowing that, if we stay at the same FTE going forward, we know that we're going to have transition needs at this time that are really high in some grades with certain populations of kids, certain schools, maybe, and then that might help us to target and hone the practice and within the group of speech pathologists that we have. So I think it's a matter of finding out, it's sort of like, if you build it, they will come. And so we're building it and we're going to see what happens next. And then from there, we'll have a lot of conversations to see what we can do with it.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. Is there any other questions for Lisa?
Hi, could I just
go ahead, Darlene? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I know that in the past, and it's not directly related to this role, but I think that's excellent, and I really look forward to hearing the kind of data that you mine from it. I was just wondering, in terms of, and this is a little off topic, but in terms of interventions for students with learning disabilities, in particular, like reading, I know that, and oral language, and I know there's a lot of supports and amazing work that speech language pathologists do to support students with learning disabilities. And I was just wondering, in terms of expanding any roles, are there any on the ground with kids? I know we have our teachers who support wonderfully, and we do have things like LLI, but I'm just wondering, I know that that's been supporting kids with LDs, that's pretty significantly, it's been a desire of parents for a long time. So I don't know if it's ever on the horizon or.
Sorry, Darlene, I just wanted to clarify the question. So are you asking if we're looking at supporting those students in a different way this year, given what's going on with?
Or just in the future, any, yeah, I mean, considering, we've had almost, 2 full school years with, some of them totally remote, in and out, in direct relation to supporting literacy as we're, transitioning into in-person. Is there any more direct support from speech paths or for kids with learning disabilities? Sorry,
No, it's okay. It's a big topic, right? Yeah. Like there's a whole lot there to unpack. So I appreciate it's a big question. I think that I know that the SLPs, a whole lot of what they do every year is they work really closely with educators around kids and their literacy goals and trying to help kids make progress based in what we know to be evidence-based practice around literacy. And so, that's what they're doing all the time. They're training, they're coaching, they're figuring out what kids' next steps are. I would say that within our team specifically, if we were to look at one, thing that we're doing, really trying to focus on this year, is we're looking at trying to really make some really efficient assessment practices so that we can help identify 1 or 2 strategies that we ourselves have tried with the students, so that way they can walk into a classroom and say, hey, this is what I know, that this is what this kid needs next because I tried it, and look at how amazing it is when we do this strategy with this student, and then trying to get some momentum going that way. So as much as, we're a team of 23 speech pathologists who have a lot of schools to get to, we're definitely always trying to maximize how many people we can reach within this topic. But Darlene, this is so big. If you ever want to reach out, send me an email. I'd be happy to talk with you more because there's a whole lot there for sure.
Thank you.
No problem.
Eva, if I can just add a quick comment to that too. I think Lisa will always undersell her leadership in the system a little bit as well. So Lisa's actually co-leading with our system lead for early years elementary curriculum, a team that's getting ready and looking forward to the Right to Read release of that inquiry, and taking an interdisciplinary report, a look at what we do, with what we learn from there. As well as Lisa is working closely with Steve Graffy, because we know that it's speech and psych. And so one of the commitments that our psychological services team has made is the launch of an Essentials of LD series for staff, because we know it starts with educator knowledge and educator practice in classrooms. And so that's an on-demand series available through our Learning Hub. And then one of the commitments that that team has made, and that we did put on pause with COVID, with people not moving in and out of buildings and doing OSR deep dives, is taking a look at our students who are IPRC'd with the exceptionality of LD, and really going back into the assessment information and figuring out who was through an academic exceptionality of LD, who was through a diagnosis of LD. And we do think there's a little pocket of kids that are borderline MID, LD, where that cognitive component is not there. It's not like the evaluation isn't there, that we need to dig into that a bit more. So we figure there's a few different groups, and part of the reason why we may not be hitting on the accommodations with as great of a fit is because of the understanding of kind of those subgroups. And so Steve's commitment is to do a dive into that so that we can appropriately accommodate for our kids and learn. And then akin to some of the other conversations we're having tonight too is, and who is the learner in front of that information as well, and really taking a hard lens on what assessment was done at what point in time, and was there bias or impact in that in terms of that intervention and assessment cycle. So we've got a lot of work ahead to us, but Lisa's, as I said, leading in conjunction with curriculum and doing the partnership with psych as well, and leading it through the 2 teams.
Thank you. I do really appreciate that. It sounds great. So looking forward to more on this.
Hey, thank you. Do we have any further questions? Okay, we're going to move on to item number 10 with regards to SEAC membership and related items. to first start off by letting everybody know that Craig Cameron, sadly for us, has chosen to step aside as a member at large following tonight's meeting. And I want to thank Craig for his years of service on SEAC. I know he's been on this board, this committee for longer than I have. So we appreciate all his contributions and the time that he's given us, and let you know, Craig, that we're going to miss you for sure. And before we sort of move on to the items that we have under this, in light of the opening for member at large position and a request for membership from the Black Parent Support Group, which was included in the updated link. I hope everybody's had a chance to take a look at that letter that we received on July 17th. I think it's worth reviewing the ministry's requirements on membership. The website provides us guidance as follows: that school boards are also responsible for establishing special education advisory committees, or SEACs, and the regulation made under the Education Act sets out the requirements for that committee. The SEACs provide an important advice on special education to their local boards or school authority. Comprises of trustees and representatives of local associations that further their interest and well-being of exceptional children or adults, make recommendations to their board on any matters affecting the establishment, development, and delivery of special education programs and services for exceptional students, must be established at each school board and school authority in Ontario, and have requirements set out in Regulation 464/97, Section 1. So we just need to note that we are required to follow the Ontario Regulation 464/97 in relation to the membership of a local association on SEAC. The regulation defines a local association as follows. Local association means an association or organization of parents that operate locally within the area of jurisdiction of a board that is affiliated with an association or organization that is not an association of or organization of professional educators, but that is incorporated and operates throughout Ontario to further the interests and well-being of one or more groups of exceptional children or adults. So in summarizing the sort of paragraphs, we see that regulation requires the association to be a group of parents operating within Durham that is affiliated with a provincial corporation that is not an organization of educators and that operates to further the interests of exceptional children or adults. So in reviewing the membership request from the Black Parent Support Group, as set out in their letter of July 17th, 2021, it is important. I really want to emphasize and recognize the clear intersectionality that exists in Durham between special education and marginalized children, as well as the valuable voice that this group would bring to the table. In order to give this request a full and proper consideration it deserves, we need to make sure that it meets the requirements of the regulation. In their letter, it does state that they are affiliated with the Ontario Alliance of Black School Educators in Ontario. There's an Ontario Alliance, yeah. And so we may need clarification on a couple of items, a clarification on the nature of the affiliation between the Black Parent Support Group and the Ontario Alliance of Black Educators, the information on whether the Alliance of Black School information to confirm that the Ontario Alliance of Black School Educators is not an association of professional educators, and information as to whether the Ontario Alliance of Black School Educators operates and the Black Parent Support Group operates to further the interests of exceptional children or adults. We just kind of would probably need attestation from the group that they are not an organization really of professional educators. I just want to open it to the floor for sort of comments and questions with respect to the letter. Like I said, I'm hoping everybody has had an opportunity to read the letter from the group and the support that they provide within their community. I think that would be really important information for us all to have at the table. I'm just going to open up to the floor for sort of questions. And I think I actually do want to sort of bring it to SENSA first, since we're now first, because I know they reached out to SENSA for support on how to approach joining the SEAC.
Thank you for that, Eva, and thank you for the consideration. Can you hear me? There's some construction going on in my background. I've got my volume up and my speaker next to my mouth, trying my best. They did approach me. I'm not affiliated with them, but I applaud their efforts. They are a group of Black parents who have got together because they all have children who have a special need. I do know that they do operate in the Durham region, but I think our biggest concern where we have to verify, where we can't even talk about the validity of what they could bring to the table if they don't meet the legislated mandates, right? So I think we do have to confirm if the Alliance of Black School Educators is a group of professional educators, which, if I understand correctly, would exclude them from this process. Is that correct?
Yeah, if they are an organization of professional educators only.
Okay.
Simply because the regulation specifically states that.
Okay.
And that's where we need clarity, a big sort of the most clarity, and that they are in fact a chapter, right? And not just a couple of people, that they operate a chapter within Durham region, right?
Okay.
Those are the two kind of big parts of the regulation that we need to meet.
So how do you want to, okay, wait a second, let's have open conversation.
Yes, let's have open conversation, what other
forward.
thoughts are around the table.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Tara.
I guess the question is, do we have, are they applying for a voting spot on the table, a non-voting spot at the table? What are they applying for? Do we have a spot?
They are applying for a voting spot at the table.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, because reading it, it's slightly convoluted because I totally agree from the perspective, like we need that voice at the table. We need to, but it's a group of parents that grow, the families span Durham, GTA, the province, and other parts of the country. So is it one support group that supplies all areas versus a local chapter of a larger provincial body as well? Like I thought that was part of that whole regulation, is that we really want someone from the local region, although I understand that the two people that are part of the parent group are there, but if they are a group made up of people from across the country, is that also cause for challenge? The other thought I'm going to throw out there, as much as I'm very sad to see Craig go, he's been a phenomenal voice at the table. If this doesn't quite fit what we need as that, could we suggest that maybe they apply, one of their reps apply for a member at large spot, since we do seem to have a vacancy right now and they could still provide their voice at the table? Just throwing that one out as well as an alternative if investigation says that they just don't meet the criteria properly. Just throwing that out.
Sorry, Carolyn, I see you have your hand up, and as chair, I'm going to wait till you guys all have the comments on it, and then I'll throw in sort of my thoughts at the very end. So, Carolyn, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to start my
hopefully if my connections hold, meet the requirements, because we're not because that's definitely a voice that's needed at the table. They should be encouraged also to apply for member at large status, because they can still then take any feedback to their organization or present concerns from their group, but on the committee, because I think we've been talking a lot about the intersectionality of disability, race, and other forms that we should be encouraging, and whether it's in this particular group or individual members of that group that still meet the criteria for members at large.
Does anybody else have any comments they want to put in? Okay. From my perspective, I would really love to see this group at the table. I'm not going to lie. I think they would be a tremendous voice. I think if they can attest to the fact that sort of explain the connection between the affiliation they have with the Ontario Alliance of Black School Educators, and confirm that they are not in fact a professional educator association, and they can attest to having a chapter here in Durham, and that it's not just a few parents that are willing to sit at the table, then I would like to give them the opportunity to do that. And if they can do that, then I would like to see us be able to approve it at, sort of in October, at our October meeting, so it could go to board for November. But we need those two items sort of clarified, because the member at large position is an option, but it's not representing their group. I think that part of having representation on SEAC is having the name of the association there, and for parents to know it's there, right? So if you have a chapter, it's a chapter of parents of an association that parents can reach out to as well, who may be looking for support. So there's that side of it. And the same thing with the idea of any sort of non-voting position. I would rather see them have a full voice at the table as opposed to part of a voice at the table. So I think if they could attest to those two items, it would be a fantastic group to have. That's just my 2 cents worth. We would need a motion to go forward on that. Sensa, you see your hand up?
I'm just agreeing with the motion. If you need someone to put the motion through, put my name down.
You don't really need a motion. You're giving directives really to the chair to reach out to the organization. The only time we need a motion is when we go to actually make the recommendation to the board, as far as that's concerned. But yeah, we're only giving the committee as a whole is giving direction to the chair to reach out to the group to ask for clarification on the various points. But yes, totally agree that I see them at the table. They're an important voice at the table. It definitely no other than a voting member, for sure. And if we can't get them in, particularly because they don't meet that, then, again, I really don't see a problem with approaching them as a member at large, because each of our members at large do go out and communicate with their community and their families that they know of and so forth as well, recognizing, and somehow we will get the group recognized, even if it's the member at large, that we get the group recognized somewhere in the membership, as far as that's concerned. But hopefully we can get them under the first association group.
Yeah, go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, I feel compelled. It's my last meeting. So I just wanted to say that unequivocally, I think we should go so as far as to, if there are, nuances within the regulations that appear to be looking like they're going to prevent this from happening, that we find a way to make it happen. Because I would love to just go change the regulations right now. Clearly, I've always felt that there's been some issues with SEAC's structure in terms of the legislative part of it. So if there's a way that we can figure this out, then with everything that we have been through in the last couple of years and all the presentations on anti-Black racism and the diversity, everything that the rest of the board is doing, this dovetails like a no-brainer. Just got to say that. Thanks.
Thank you, Craig. 100% agree. Anybody else have any?
Just wanted to add, Eva, that I just confirmed, because I thought in my conversation with them that they are part of the Toronto SEAC membership. And I just confirmed online that they are part of the Toronto SEAC. So hopefully they have a Durham chapter and we can move this forward. I do have a follow-up question though, Eva. So yeah, I understand from what Donna said that the communication will come out from the chair.
Yes, if you're okay with that, unless you would like to reach out to them yourself, if you've got a connection, or I can reach out to them directly and just get, seek further clarification of those two items.
Either way works with me.
Okay. Maybe as the chair, I should reach out to them so that they know that, the committee as a whole very much is looking for this information and really hope to be able to move it forward at our next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, so the other item is, of course, we will have our member at large position that is open as well, in which we will have to put out sort of a call for applications for. And we will need to organize a subcommittee to review those recommendations and then bring the candidates forward to SEAC. By show of hands, anybody who wants to be on that subcommittee to review it? Tara, okay, Tara. I can't see all the hands that are coming up, so. I'm happy to sit on it. Like I said, I'm not. If anybody wants to sit on that committee, just to confirm it, pop me an email, and then we'll establish that subcommittee so that we can any applications that come in, we can all look at them and have that discussion. Okay. All right. Is there any other questions with respect to the SEAC memberships? Sorry, go ahead, Andrea.
Sorry, would you like to direct staff to create a draft posting and circulate it through yourself and SEAC so that we would be able to confirm the post, either move it before the October meeting or confirm it at the October meeting in order to publish that publicly? I'm just looking at timelines and what you would like to direct staff in terms of support. We're happy to help with any part of the process.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I would like it if you guys were able to put together a draft of that, and maybe we can get it circulated to the group before the next meeting, because I think the sooner we get it out there, the better to have the position filled. Donna, go ahead.
Yeah, again, it's the silly timing of minutes that go to board, although I can always bring something forward. I just like to get things done, get it moved forward before we end up hitting the organizational meeting in December, because no business gets done really in December. So it would be the sooner the better. And if we could get it so that we actually go through for approval, the posting and out, by October, that would be great.
Okay, Andrea, go ahead.
Just as follow-up, so what we'll do is I will put a draft together based on the previous posting. Tara, Eva, as the two committee members coming forward, we'll make sure you have early eyes on that, and then we'll circulate it to the broad group. From a subcommittee perspective, it would be an asset to have a third member on that. And then my offer is to sit as staff support to that, just to help guide process. Obviously not deciding, and just for Lisa and I will collate all the responses. Hopefully there'll be a flurry because of the great work and the dynamic table, and then bring that. But I agree, we'll aim to get it posted so that we can give an update at our October meeting if there's been any applicants at that time, and work towards bringing it forward before the org meeting in December, right through the whole process. So we would be probably looking to vote in November. No, we would need to have it open and closed before our October meeting in order to go to November board.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Andrea. I appreciate that. Okay. And if anybody would like to be at least a third, if not a fourth, that would be great. You can just pop me an email. You can think about it. Okay. Moving on then to our open discussion period, which we're talking about the standard development committee recommendations. Again, on the updated link that went out this afternoon, the work of the subcommittee that we had over the summer, the feedback on the standards is on there. We don't have time to go over the whole document sort of during this meeting, but maybe I'll let sort of Donna remind everybody what we were looking at, and you know, just a sort of our overall thoughts. I mean, a lot of it we're looking to, and I was hoping to have it ready for today, but unfortunately I just ran out of time with work, to also add a letter to go with our submission, because really it's a very lengthy document, but a lot of it comes down to accountability and how that accountability is put into the system, along with the standardization. So I'm gonna hand it to Donna to sort of remind everybody what it's all about.
Yeah. Okay. And if the document that is provided, we basically summarized basically under the 10 different, if you wish, barriers or that is covered throughout the K-12 report. So you have attitudes, behaviors, perceptions, assumptions. There's curriculum assessment. There's awareness and training. And as there's over close to 200, actually, if you actually go through the transition and training, it's actually a separate document. There's even more. There's more, over 200 recommendations. So it's quite extensive. But as Eva has said, that you know, many of the recommendations you can actually go through, and I think it was also in there in the link, the DDSB's draft response, I think, as far as that was concerned, but on it. And many of the recommendations, some of them, as I said, as a board, we can say that, yes, we do this, but we're looking at a standard practice across the province around, you know, policies and decisions. My key thing is, as Eva said, is that, you know, accountability is definitely a huge, but it's also I would say, an implementation plan and an inter-ministerial and education sector boards coordinated implementation plan. Because without that coordination and without the support from the various ministries, because some of these fall under the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Child and Youth Services, or MCCS, whatever it's called now, and so forth, that it's really critical that there has to be a buy-in. And it's I think those are the key things that we somewhat talked about as far as going into the letter is that there's got to be commitment across that, and it's got to be nonpartisan. This has nothing to do with what political parties you are. It needs to be supported and moved forward. And because, again, if you look at, the largest portion of our funding is actually spent on human resources. Yes, we do recognize that funding is an issue, as well as human resources at times, particularly in the North Boards, when they're asked some of the recommendations that are in there that are required. You wouldn't even get the professionals available to the boards in those resources. But many of the barriers that are faced, as I said, are around attitudes, assumptions, beliefs, and outdated policies, procedures, which basically, and a lot of them are written based on the medical diagnoses of exceptionalities and not on what is considered under the Human Rights Charter of Freedoms Act as far as the definition of what a disability is. So as Craig had mentioned, you like to change a few things. Some of those are just exactly what is considered a disability, marrying up those various definitions so that we have a common definition that every board is working towards, right? So, so again, I think that's the biggest thing. But I would say that if you have any further input before we get this letter off, because the timeline is still September 30th, there's a post-secondary also bunch of transition standards development committee, but they've been, I think, extended to sometime in November as well. We don't know what's happening with this one, but we need, if in order to get a response in, we would have to get feedback from each of the committee members as far as before our next meeting and approved through the emails, I would say.
Thank you, Donna. Yeah, if you guys want to take a look at the comments that we've circulated, I intended to have a draft letter circulated to you guys either by the end of day tomorrow, myself, or through the weekend, because I'd like you to have that letter as soon as possible. I'd like to be able to get our comments off well before the 30th deadline. And my time's a little bit more limited now that I'm working almost pretty much full-time hours. So if you guys could kind of make that a priority to take a look at, and hopefully we can get feedback sort of sooner rather than later. Does anybody have any questions with respect to that?
And I was just going to say, Eva, each association has the ability to go online and also do their own feedback, provide their own as far as that. Even parents have that ability as well. And I know that we are scheduled to start reviewing the comments that have come in October as a committee, the K-12 SDC in October. Because basically the feedback comes in, the committee looks at the feedback, and then we submit our final report to the Minister of Seniors and Accessibility, right? Because it's under AODA that we're doing this. And then it's up to the government to basically decide whether they approve or modify or whatever some of the recommendations. And there are a lot of them. So we're really trying to push this so we don't hit, although we're kind of hitting it anyways, a provincial election and delay this, because in order to meet the deadline date of having accessible Ontario by 2024, it's got to move forward.
Right. Thank you. Okay, if there's no further questions or comments with respect to the K-12 standards, we can move on to business arising from the minutes. and which was the business arising from the last minutes was our response letter to the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services with regards to the Ontario Autism Program. And we did get a letter back, which was actually a little bit, I was a bit surprised, a lot more informative than our first letter. They indicate on here that, and I think the letter was circulated as well, but the independent intake organization calls for applications was done in December of 2020 to select an organization to fill the role for the provincial independent intake organization. They will be accountable to the ministry for overseeing several key functions of the needs-based program, including but not limited to the delivery of the determination of needs process, the training and the management of care coordinators. They are currently in progress of selecting an applicant for that, or a successful applicant to assume the role. They have released apparently several calls for proposals to select providers to deliver the services, and that's ongoing. And apparently there's more information on their website with respect to that. Apparently in March, children and youth who were registered with OAP have started receiving invitations to participate in the launch of the core clinical services. 2,000 children and youth from across the province were invited to participate. Currently, at the time of the letter, 478 children were enrolled, and we're continuing to enroll more children as families responded to their invitation. The ministry has asked the Child and Parent Resource Institute to oversee the launch of the core clinical services. All care coordinators participating in the launch have undergone comprehensive training led by the Children and Parent Resource Institute on the determination of needs process. The care coordinators will be guiding families through the determination of needs process, including meeting with the families to identify the child's goals, strengths, and support needs, allocating funding to families to purchase core clinical services, supporting families with the next steps to access core clinical services of their choice. And based on the results of their clinically informed process, care coordinators will identify the intensity of support needs as being extensive, moderate, or limited across different age ranges. And this information will result in a corresponding Ontario Autism Program funding allocation to those families. Apparently, families have started meeting with the care coordinators. Does anybody have any further? And I'm going to start with Sensa because I think this is sort of for her to discuss first.
Well, I am very happy with the response. It seemed like he was trying to share information with us, and I'm very happy about that. Some things that I did notice is that it's a 2-year rollout. So where we know that early intervention is key and these families need immediate services, they have a 2-year projection before they will verify that everything's been implemented. Something I do want to share that is positive is I work for York Region, and our infant child development services is one of the approved caregiver mediated model practitioners. So we have just announced that last week. They did say in that letter that there'll be more training involved, even though 75% of our caseload are children either at risk or with a diagnosis of autism, but there will be more specific training related to the caregiver mediated model, because these will be our workers who go into the home before the child is in childcare and work with the parents. So I'm expecting, if it's just announced now and we still need training, that we're not going to have rollout till about January. So what I'm hoping is that other like-minded services also applied for these to run these services, and we'll see some more movement.
Yeah, I think my biggest concern is the lack of movement and the slowness of the movement with respect to this program. Because the other system was essentially collapsed, and, a new system rolling out has taken a long time for these families.
You know me, I always think of the positive. So the only thing that I can think of positively here is we did have a system that failed. And in order to hopefully fix those things that allowed the system to fail, hopefully those are the things that are taking the time, that we are waiting the time for not just the person that applies, but the right organization that can run this program competently. So that's what I'm hoping for.
I'm hoping for that as well. Does anybody else have any comments or questions with respect to the letter we received back? Or any other questions that would arise from the letter that would need to go back to the ministry? Okay, well, let's hope that it continues to roll out and it's successful. And I'm happy for York Region that they've got that role. So that's great. Okay. Moving on then to association reports. I confirm that we haven't received any. And I just want to remind anybody that if you have association reports, like events coming up for your organization or information you want to share ahead of time, if you just email that to me before the meeting, we'd appreciate that. And then we'll be able to read it out for people viewing our meeting. And we would share amongst the SEAC members as well for circulation if necessary. Correspondence, the only piece was the one we just talked about, the ministry and our previous letter for SEAC representation. So we can move on then to community concerns. Start of a new school year. I'm sure there's a lot to talk about. I see Tara's hand up, and I think I saw Sensa. So we'll go for Tara, then we'll go to Sensa, and then we'll continue on.
Sorry, I beat you out there, Sensa. So I referred to it before Lisa. Specifically, last year, I think it was sometime last year, because, all the days are blending into each other still. I know you had come at one point, you'd come back and had said that a lot of the speech pathologists coming into the schools, we were having challenges with the face masks and the shields and the safety protocol that was preventing a lot of that work that folks were coming in. And I had also asked about what about the students with issues with, wearing the masks and that sort of thing, children with Down syndrome, large tongue, very, very hard to enunciate. And now you have an additional muffle. Has there been any movement or any other options and opportunities that have shown up? I know COVID and we still have to keep everyone safe, but you've got teachers and students and parents all being very frustrated because they can't talk to each other because they can't understand each other. Is there anything that's going on? Any developments in that area, I guess?
No problem. So there are a couple of things there. I think there's how do we as speech pathologists, what are we doing with kids when we're working with them one-on-one, and what does that PPE look like? And then there's also what's happening in the classroom, sort of when everyone's together. As COVID has ebbed and flowed, so have the PPE guidelines. Like our guidelines are always adapting to meet the need at the time. And so we're in a little bit of a different situation going back into school with PPE right now than we were when we were back in February of last year. So we are now operating under a guideline where we're wearing masks with kids all the time. Like that's what we have to do. But we only have to also wear eyewear if the students are unmasked for some reason. So we are able to work with families around, we have these spaces set up in schools where we have plexiglass barriers, we have eye protection, we have face shields, we have masks. And if it's really important for us to do some work where we need to see the child's face. If they're within that mandate of mask wearing, because we're so protected and we can be spaced out that way, with a discussion with a parent, we can talk about options for being able to see what's going on with that child's face. In terms of what's happening in the classroom, that's a little bit more individualized for what's needed. So we do still have access to the clear masks that are available for adults. At this point in time, those masks are not fitted for a child's face. So we're not able to distribute them across all of, the students in a classroom. But because we've always been in the position with the clear masks where you can see what's going on really nicely, but you can't always hear what's being said because that plastic muffles the auditory signal so much. So we really take it as an individual accommodation. The hearing resource teachers have been paying very close attention to what the students need and offering the clear mask as an option, but also in conjunction with a trial. Speech language pathologists are in a similar situation where if there are students who would benefit from seeing what's happening on the face of an adult, then it's a discussion and based around the individual need within that room. Other options that have been put in place in some cases have been amplification systems for some educators, et cetera, to try and help support whatever the auditory and communication needs are. So that's a really long way of saying it depends. Does that answer your question though, Tara?
Yeah, and I guess, it's continuing saga for my own son. I know there's other things, and I know his teacher has expressed that I can't understand what he's saying. So if he's asking for help, I don't know what he's saying. And I can't ask him to take off the mask because that's not safe. And those sorts of things, because he just cannot enunciate properly anyway, even without the mask. So, but he's not the only kid with the challenge, and, kids that are, almost nonverbal or single word sentences, just the muffling. And how, from an inclusion standpoint, how are these kids going to be included if no one can understand them? At some point, kids just shut down because they can't get they cannot get their needs across. And then other students just will stop listening because I can't understand what he's saying. How do we address that, from that whole perspective? It's just problem compounding and
absolutely
safety, health, I totally get paramount above everything, but you're also talking about kids' mental health as well now, because if they're not being included because no one can understand what they're saying, how do we handle that? Like, what are our options on that? And I guess back to we got to talk and figure things out on a case by case.
Yeah, pretty much. But in a situation like that, where students truly are not being able to make themselves understood in a classroom, that's when we as speech pathologists want to be called into help problem solve. That's what we're trained to do. And I could say, there's this magic system that would work. I can't do that because we'd have to see what would work specifically for him or for other kids. So really it does become a referral to our service. And that is why we're here, really, is to help kids participate and be able to connect with others in the classroom. That's like priority one. So I would encourage and advocate with all the families you encounter, please have your schools reach out to their speech pathologist. And if they don't know who to call, they can always call me and I can make sure that they get to where they need to go.
Thank you so much. Sensei Renab, you're next.
Thank you. So I'd first like to start with some gratitude. I want to thank Andrea because she's always super responsive for me, but I also think that sometimes I'm not using your time to the best of where it should be. Where is this coming from? As a SEAC member, occasionally families reach out to me to ask me for support. They're struggling with interacting with their school systems or their IEP. I have a new family who I'm approaching tomorrow. So I thought that I would ask formally, when I, as a SEAC member, is approached by a family, who exactly should I be contacting? I know I try to capture what the parent says to me objectively and write it out. I include them on the email, but I'm forwarding them to you, Andrea, for you to probably forward them to someone else, right? And I want to make sure that we're following a smooth process.
So through you, Eva. Thank you. So first of all, for the partnership, because I love it when we collaborate and get things moving for kids. Second, our job is to serve students and families. So please don't ever think that that's adding or that is the privilege of our roles. And as you heard from Lisa and know from the other members of our team, it's really what we honestly believe as a team. So the answer is twofold. When in doubt, come. We'll figure it out and we'll anchor it to the right person. Because sometimes it's a nuance of, well, is it that service or that service that can best be the first entry point? Or is it, who is that for that school location or that geography within the board? And I think, so that's one route to always, when in doubt, call us. Or as I said, it's a privilege to be able to be part of that. If a family is not yet having their needs met or their child's needs are not yet being met, we certainly want to address that. The other lens is if the family's identifying the school that they're with and they haven't yet spoken with their school administrator. So if there's something about, peer-to-peer relation or some information disconnect, when I think of our colleagues on the screen joining us from elementary and secondary, I put my principal hat back on, and I know Kyla would do the same thing as well. I'd want to know as a principal that a family was struggling, that we weren't yet meeting their needs. And so you can always direct to school staff, but you can always direct to us centrally as well, and then we'll figure it out. And I believe, Shannon, do you want to jump in on that one from a principal lens?
No, I 100% agree with you. Often, I always like families to reach out to me if there's a concern, because I may not be aware of it, or if there's just an unknown, right? So if there's something that's just, I'm not sure how to navigate this, I like them to reach out. We have a conversation. We talk about their little one. I'm an elementary one, so their little one or their big one, depending, and help them navigate the best way to do that. And often that's within our school team, but sometimes it is outside the school team. But if I'm not sure, then I can reach out as well. So
I think it just matters, right? Because if they're reaching out through you, it's because of a value of the association and the perspective for you to come alongside them. And I think that's really, really important. So whichever door they feel most comfortable coming through with your support, the commitment of the team is to be here to catch and to listen and then to take action. So I would go to Lisa's point about long-winded answer, but the answer is any of our team members should be able to say thank you for reaching out, and let's try and understand to fix.
Thank you. I do promote appropriate advocacy skills. I do ask if they talk to their classroom teacher first, if they've talked to their principal or VP. Does anybody know? Oftentimes, the families, when they finally reach out to me, they're frustrated from whatever's happening, from whose ever perspective, right? So oftentimes they are looking for new eyes on the situation.
And that's okay. And in this case, so thank you. I'll be watching for an email in the next day or two from you, and then that'll be our first opportunity of this year. Yeah.
We'll see, because sometimes families call me and I can coach them on how they open the conversation, what they need to do with their teacher or their principal, and it closes there, right? Yeah, sometimes they ask for help, I support them, and then they don't follow through, right?
But I think in essence, you just captured one of the important commitments of SEAC, and the reason why SEAC is such an important committee to have within a district. Because it is that if not comfortable with board staff, there's an entry in, because as Shannon said, we certainly wouldn't want any family or student to not be thriving. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Anybody else with, Donna, go ahead.
I was just going to say that along that lines, I know as a trustee and being involved in a long time as far as that's concerned, I know when I get any complaints coming in or concerns or whatever, I usually do reach out, exactly what you you said, Cesarina, that I reach out to just ask them, have you talked to your teacher? Have you talked to your principal? And then if it's that to the point, then, from a trustee point of view, I also need to reach out to the superintendent, because it's also the superintendent's role in order to have an understanding of what's going on in their schools as well. So, I mean, what you do is valuable. And then the last thing I also do is if the people have never don't know about the associations, which often is the case, I actually also refer them to the SEAC member to say, hey, have you reached out to, do you know of this association, and have you reached out? Because that happens quite a bit as well. So it's sort of a critical piece from a trustee's point of view, is that, I also refer them to the association. And it is an education piece, because there are times where, especially when a parent is coming into the community from a different board, they don't know the processes and so forth. And I can honestly say the documentation is much better, and our SEAC webpage and as well as the parent page around special education services is much better. I can also help them through that. And so that's what I do. So everything that you're doing is great. To me, it's trying to alleviate some of the frustration that's out there, is really critical to bring that sort of anxiety down a bit, and making sure that they're heard and referring to the best place at this point in time.
Thank you. Anybody else want to bring any community concerns to the table? Carolyn, go ahead.
Yes, for families that have transitioned, I guess, to online for this year for secondary, is there a central location with the principal of the at-home board or for their child's teacher?
Through you, Eva, if that's okay. So our DDSB at home schools, elementary and secondary, have full staffing, principal, vice principals, certs, all of the same supportive roles. And they do have websites similar to our bricks and mortar kind of schools as well. I believe you asked specifically about secondary. The principal for DDSB at home secondary is Allison Van Beenum. Phenomenal leader, and I will post her spelling into the chat box for you, Carolyn.
Perfect, thank you.
But there is vice principal team as well as 3 certs at DDSB at home secondary as well.
Great, thank you. Anybody else with community concerns? No? Okay. Then we can move on to celebrations and successes. Does anybody have anything they want to bring forward on that? Craig, go ahead.
Well, I suppose my celebration is I'm free of SEAC after tonight, but I'm just kidding. Don't take that too seriously. I just mean it's I was looking at a letter. Tara, you're about to feel really old, because I wrote my letter on October 8th, 2015 to dear Miss Cully, as you were the chair at that point in time. And I can't believe it's actually been that long. That made me feel very old, but I look a lot older. You look exactly the same. So that's kudos to you, right?
It's the hair dye, Craig.
It must be the hair dye or the lack of hair, one or the other. So listen, my celebration is actually just being involved with this over the past number of years. And I want to thank some of the veterans, some of the new people I don't know as well as I would have liked to have gotten to know, but such is the nature of time. I'm dating myself by saying that Neil Young, said there comes a time, and I guess this is the time for me. So I think it's time for a refresher and some new voice at the table. So I want to thank folks like Tara and Kathy, Keedy and Donna, of course, who was just ridiculous wealth of knowledge. Andrea as well, of course, and Darlene. There's too many, but and all the new folks that are here that I didn't get a chance to know as well. I learned a lot I had to at times practice humility because I know I have a big mouth. But thank you, all of you, and my really amazing people, and keep advocating, keep fighting. We all know our kids are worth it. My celebration is actually, I'm going to name a name. Her name is Michelle Da Camara. We call her Da Cameron because she is just pretty awesome. And she made a great reach out to my son who started grade 10. As you know, this is his first time actually going to high school, really. So, because the grade 9 was a bit of a thing. Awesome reach out, made him feel absolutely comfortable saying, hey, the resource room is there for you to come and use. So a shout out to Michelle for that awesomeness. And I'm going to continue to advocate because, as you know, I have an identified son. He was 9 when I started this. He's now going to be 15 in a month, which blows my mind, and he's in grade 10. So he's making his way through, bumps here, bumps there, but grade 10 looks pretty optimistic right now, and he's positive about it. So thanks to all of you folks in this room that are doing all this thankless work. Keep going. You're all absolutely worthwhile. Thanks.
Thank you, Craig. Kathy, I see you have your hand up.
I want to thank Craig because it's a celebration of how different perspectives can really move thinking. So that would be my first one. My other celebration is for Hearing Resource. The quick story is my child was going to be riding a horse with other people in Sunderland on Wednesday, which was a completely new children who are all learning to ride horseback during COVID as something to do being together. And so our hearing resource teacher brought a loaner FM for us to try before we had to buy one so that we could bridge the physical gap of distance to hear what was happening. And so it was brought to my home and quickly reviewed so that we could try it out and see if it's worth purchasing and make Wednesday a safe day. We came home with ribbons, including a first place. So we have a happy child at home, but it really is a result of a team's effort to recognize how learning happens in different places, and getting the barriers out of the way helps too. So that was pretty amazing. So I need to give a shout out to the team.
That's pretty awesome. Congratulations to your daughter. I give my right arm to ride a horse, and deathly allergic, unfortunately.
I don't understand anything about why you lose or win, but it was a fun day, and the horse only stepped on my foot once.
That's awesome. Does anybody else have anything they want to bring forward?
I'll just share quickly. My daughter started Durham College on last week. So she's in the culinary management program there, and the Whitby campus. And she has an access plan. Craig, is that what it's called? So we met. We had a great meeting with her support worker, and her accommodations are in place, and it's been she's loving it. So I'm fingers crossed, and thank you, Craig, for oh my gosh, 6 years of service for our families and our students, and we will miss you. So, and thank you, of course, to all of our members and all of our staff who come in and support our families. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Does anybody else have anything? Go ahead, Carolyn.
To unmute myself. My son recently, he graduated this past June from Durham College, and he did a 3-month in a rehab center that he's finishing up. And he will be starting a new internship at the Toronto Zoo on Monday. So happy for all the support that he's received throughout the years at DDSB, and then just the ideas and support from the group from SEAC. I think that helped me provide proper guidance, not just to other people, but to my own child.
Does anybody else have anything? Okay, well, I'd like to close with my own thanks to Craig. You've been a valuable voice on this table. We'll miss you greatly. You've helped me a couple of times, and I appreciate that more than you know. You helped elevate me to like super aunt status this year, which is, you know, not an easy task. So really appreciate all you do, and I hope you keep in touch. You've been a valuable voice. Thank you all. Okay, so our next SEAC meeting is October 21st, 2021, right here on Zoom. One day we might see each other in the same room again. We would just need a motion to adjourn. Tara, any seconders? Come on, Craig.
I can do that.
Seconded by Craig. All in favor? Okay, great. Thanks. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, all.
Thanks,
Bye.
Craig.
Thanks for everything.
Thank you so much, Craig.
I'll see you all around somewhere. You might just look at
see you around the
gallery.
watering hole.
Yeah, you might see me sitting in the gallery one day. So, okay.